Today, we're talking about AI and the impact of AI within home care and what does it really mean for us all. So, to start with, I'm going to throw you right in there, Hannah, and ask you, A, if you could introduce yourself, but B, what does it really mean? AI in home care, what are we talking about? What is our checklist and what are we thinking about there?
Hi, firstly, thanks for having me today. My name's Hannah. I'm the CEO of an organization called CareBrain. We are a software development organization who are harnessing the power of generative AI to develop really helpful tools, support tools for care providers for a number of different reasons. So, apologies. When you talk about this topic, I thought it was really interesting actually when we were organizing this talk today that they'd chosen from hands-on to high tech as the topic, because for me, my perspective is the philosophy behind all of our development and the implementation and rollout of AI needs to be to free up people's time to be doing more hands-on care. So we all know the challenges that the care sector faces. So overstretched teams, tight budgets, high churn, clients and carers. How can we ethically and responsibly implement tools that really help your teams free up their time for that high value task? So for me, implementing helpful, ethical AI solutions should free up people's time to do more hands-on care. So I thought it was a really interesting topic actually. And when we talk about, the motivations behind it, for me, the philosophy behind, good care within the social care sector is very much people. And that's what technology should do. It should be focused on how you can augment the roles of the people within the sector, how you can free up their time, how you can make sure best practice really is the benchmark. And that's really what we do at CareBrain, is to support that kind of move.
That's really great. Thank you so much. And I'm sure everyone's going to be really interested to talk about the ethics. And I know that you've got some really interesting opinions around that and how do we preserve all of that. But we'll get into that in just one second. But Gemma, hi.
Hi.
If you could introduce yourself and tell us who you are, where you're from, and also operationally, how would you use or how are you using AI and how can we all go and implement it and where, whether it's recruitment or, retention, where are we using it and what are we doing with it?
Absolutely. So hello everybody, thank you for welcoming me today. My name's Gemma Lock, I'm Head of Commercial at Trinity Home Care Group. So we're a national living care company and we also have visiting care branches across the south of the country. We're rated outstanding for those services, and part of that is really looking at how we can use technology in a positive way. Reiterating what Hannah said, it's not about taking away that hands-on eye-to-eye contact of really supporting people. It's about enhancing a service, becoming more efficient at that service, and really improving people's well-being, whether that's from a hospital discharge pathway, whether that's a monitoring pathway as well, making sure that we can really track and ensure that people's well-being is looking to be improved, and we can track those outcomes as well. So it's to alert us when there's trigger points of areas that we need to improve on from a training point of view. Are there common areas where the carers might need additional support? Are there areas where we've got areas, so essentially the client's well-being has improved or not improved, and also how is their mood? A big part of how they recover is enhancement of mood. So can we use AI from a standpoint to really enhance that well-being? Can we use it for rehabilitation? Absolutely yes. So there's a company that we're working alongside at the moment called Stroll, and we're really looking at how we can use they have a Parkinson's, it's not virtual reality, it's actual reality, and it uses these fantastic glasses effectively, and Metabase and Microsoft, they're all waving their flag. It's got real good endorsements, and that's where we can actually use really good neurologists and physiotherapists and occupational therapists to really enhance that person's well-being, looking at it from a remote standpoint, so delivering support services whether in a hospital setting or indeed home, and that's what we're exploring, but looking at how that can overall improve somebody's mood. And simple things if you're in a bed and you can't actually get out of bed for whatever reason, it's about having that functional exercise to help somebody, positively engage. And I've used it myself, it's been brilliant. Sitting, squat to stand position, getting the glutes working and getting all your muscle groups working, and it's also a sense of achievement. And by that kind of remote tracking, you can use AI and other technologies and other influences to really enhance people's well-being. Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, Gemma, and it really feeds into the points that Hannah's making, where actually we are becoming more hands-on by being AI first, and we're sort of moving all of the kind of work that we would otherwise be busying one of our really valuable limited resources for, and saying, well, actually, hold on a second, a machine can do that, but actually we're going to be frontline care workers and do the actual human stuff.
Yeah.
So Jane, how do we feel about this from a national perspective? If we're thinking CQC or the government, what are their thoughts? What are the conversations that you're having at a more national level? And I'll ask you to introduce yourself, but I'm sure everyone knows who you are, but over to you.
Thank you, Amrit. So I'm Jane Townson, CEO of the Home Care Association. We represent and support providers of care in people's own homes. As far as the national picture on AI is concerned, the government is extremely supportive. They want to see AI and technology being leveraged across the whole of the public sector and the whole of government. But specifically in health and social care, the NHS 10-year plan talks specifically about AI and technology in terms of improving diagnostics, workflow management, and also predictive analytics, but they constantly emphasizing the need for human touch, but also that it has to be done in a safe and protected way, and that there is a private member's AI bill going through Parliament that hasn't been put in by the government. It won't lead to a single regulator in this space, but the other regulators, so MHRA, the medical devices people, the CQC, NICE, the National Institute of Clinical and Healthcare Excellence, and the Health Research Authority and the Information Commissioner's Office, they're all working together in this space. The CQC has so far produced some guidance for GPs, which is quite good, and I think that those principles will apply across. It's got to be safe, and the thing that I like about CareBrain is that one of the things that we're seeing is quite a lot of providers and their staff are using ChatGPT, and it isn't private and it isn't accurate a lot of the time, whereas with specialized tools, they are curated, specifically with national guidance, CQC regulations, your own company policies. And Hannah, although she's CEO of a software developer, actually comes from care. So she was a care operator herself. The organization she worked for got outstanding in all 5 domains. So having that combination of people that really understand care delivery with the techie people is very powerful.
That's so interesting. It really brings me on to the question for you, Hannah, of the ethics behind it. So if I can't go and put my care plan into ChatGPT, what am I doing? And also, how do I train my staff? Is there a policy I need to write? Is there a code of ethics behind this? What is the right thing to do?
I think it's a really important question, because I think it would be naive to suggest your teams aren't using AI already, whether that's in a safe capacity or whether they're using tools that are freely available to them, for example, ChatGPT. So I think a responsibility that providers have is to equip their teams with the right tools, to train them on what AI is and what it should not be used for. There's huge opportunity when it comes to implementing AI, but there are also huge pitfalls you can fall into. So we are responsible for such sensitive data within the care sector, health and care sector. It is our responsibility to make sure that is used in a very safe way. So it's not appropriate to put those client details into ChatGPT, for example. There are huge conflicts around GDPR, data privacy, etc. So it's really important that I think business owners, quality teams, and management teams are well equipped to understand how to use AI effectively, and that starts, I think, with business owners understanding the literacy of people within their team. We call it your AIQ. What do you understand AI to be? Where do you use it, and how can we help you do that safely? So tools that are designed, as Jane said, specifically for the care sector with an understanding of the real challenges you're facing. I worked in, as you said, a home care provider. Our team collectively have over 100 years care operations experience. So, we do understand the nuances of this sector. We understand the absolute how vital it is to make sure that this data is secure, that responses are right first time, that hallucinations, which you might have heard of, it's where it gives a very plausible response, but it's not the correct response. Those are completely eliminated as far as possible. So I think for providers, it's about understanding your team's AIQ, for want of a better phrase, training them on what AI is, what it isn't. It's not a search engine, it is, we call it probabilistic rather than deterministic. So it's used for specific purposes. You are required, I think, to have an AI policy, and any good kind of software provider will help you design that with a really good understanding of what your team's needs are. It's so important to have data DPIAs in place, and make sure that the software provider that you choose, that there is, real integrity, that there's transparency, that they support you to implement these tools. And I think it's really important to kind of not wait for the perfect solution, because everybody's looking for something that works slightly differently for their providers. So start small, really understand what's out there, and understand what your teams are doing. I think that's a really good first step. And you do need to be on the front foot, because AI is here and people are using it potentially quite dangerously.
And the Care Quality Commission recently pulled up a provider for the fact that their staff were using probably ChatGPT without any governance. This provider was failing on multiple fronts, so it wasn't the AI use per se that made them get an inadequate rating, but it didn't help. And in CQC's business plan for 25-26, which they published recently, AI use and governance is on their list, for themselves. So that's another thing you can be expecting them to do, to start using AI tools themselves. That may help to speed things up, let's hope. Also, councils too are beginning to use AI. So we've got a conference in November, the 20th of November. We've got a Director of Adult Social Services from Derby City Council coming to talk about how they're using AI for care assessments. We have a few concerns about that because of potential bias in the data sets, but as long as they've got humans in the loop and they're using it to help speed things up and process information, it might be okay. But some of these issues, there's lots of really good examples as well of councils in Norfolk. They've been using predictive analytics with falls technology, and they've managed to very much reduce falls, I think over 80%, which has saved a lot of money. And in Somerset, they're doing similar things. So there's lots of opportunities for doing things well.
And that's really interesting, Jane, because earlier this year I was at a workshop day, and it was led by somebody who is a strategist in the AI space. And one of the key things that he was talking about was, look, AI is great, but unless as a business there is some return on your investment, why are we doing this? And I think that Gemma, the question I've got for yourself is, how would you use it, or how are you using it, and what is the cost saving that a care provider can expect? Because we know we're not going to reduce number of care workers by using AI. We probably aren't going to reduce the number of the overhead spend in our offices using AI, because we're going to need that human involvement. But how do we then increase our profitability by getting behind AI, and what can AI practically do? I mean, how are you using it on a daily basis?
Yeah, so I just want to say also, I work very closely alongside Hannah in the company that Jane referred to, and it is really about alliances with the right people and having the understanding to make sure that, as you say, the ratification process is there and the due diligence is done. So first and foremost, I think we just need to really emphasise there are lots of providers probably trying to come into this space at this moment in time. It can be very confusing. I think from an operational standpoint of, five-star outstanding, it's the understanding of the operating model and the efficiencies and the pitfalls and the highs and lows. So I think first and foremost, we just need to emphasise, just to be really clear on that. And we did, back in January of this year, we did a trial for CareBrain whilst they were looking at the efficiencies of the principalities of it and where the pitfalls were. And it's really great to pair up with home care providers who are using that technology. I think for us as well, it's looking at efficiencies. What we don't want to do is get our, we all know care plans are extremely detailed documents. We want to have the eye contact, we want to have the discussions with the family, we want to have a transparent conversation. And what that helps us support that is actually looking at emphasising that real understanding, deep understanding of that individual's requirements as well as the families. But also it's about documenting things accurately, but then ratifying that. So it's not a case of you capture it all and therefore it's done. You've got to make sure and ratify that to ensure it's in line with policies, procedures, etc., which is a very clever way CareBrain can help. For us as well, we're really looking at how to improve the efficiencies of our recruitment, our retention, how do we support our outcomes, our training and delivery, as I mentioned earlier on. So it's, as a national provider, we get lots of applications through, but we want to get the very best of those carers in the industry. So we, CV mining at the best of times can be very tedious. It can be very repetitive. And if we can automate that to really look at the skills that we're wanting to get for a specific client. And what that also helps us with is the carer profiling as well. So we can look at really aligning, we all talk about personalised care and dedicated carers that are going to be tailored to your needs. But what does that actually truly mean? Is that a spin on a word to potentially support somebody? Or is that a genuine offer? And what we want to be able to do is genuinely say that this carer, based on what you would like to have in a living carer, for example, it's a very personalised relationship, we have done our utmost to really find the golden nuggets for you to help support you at home. So it's quite a big subject, but ultimately it's how do we make people more efficient, how to improve the well-being of our staff as well, because if we're investing in AI, we're improving the outcomes for our clients, but also the carers. We can do really good assessments on mood and note-taking and everything else associated with that. So it's a really big picture, but it's really exciting time for us.
And so just kind of staying on that for a second, if somebody was using a specific tool, what would you recommend? Are you using things off the shelf? Have you got something that is like CareBrain that is really specific to that?
Yeah.
Are you creating your own? What should one do?
We're actually at the start of that journey. So with regards to CareBrain, absolutely, we've aligned on that. With regards to recruitment, that's another discussion. We're at the early stages of that at this moment in time. But we are looking at how do we effectively recruit and operationally improve our efficiencies. So we're at the very start of that journey. So we're doing all of our homework at the moment. And it is, as I say very honestly, it can be a minefield out there. But I think it's asking the right questions and getting those providers, so to speak, who have got the history, they understand the clients, the carers' needs, the operational deliverables and the constraints as well. But we are working with a number of different companies at this moment in time, as I say, Stroll, CareBrain. What was really interesting though, last week myself and a colleague went over to a college in Surrey, and they actually have a whole suite dedicated to AI practical approach to learning, and it was a real environment in the round, and they had cameras all around, and they demonstrated an operating theatre. So it had all the noises, all the sensory things going on, and you could do certain tasks which could then train people. And it's really embracing the AI ability to actually, there was another example, slightly off care, but there was digger training. So they wouldn't go and, drive a digger straight away. They would do the AI practicalities of learning to drive a digger in this studio. So it's really embracing the opportunities out there, and the students are learning it. So we almost have to be, ahead of the game with it, because they'll be the carers of the future. And they will be using technology, and they will also, interestingly, they had a couple of robots there. And it's not to take away from care, but it's to enhance somebody's mood, it's to monitor somebody's outcome, it's to check if there is that kind of well-being of something might be going wrong, or there might be an improvement or a significant decline. So it acts as a trigger point to flag if there's any potential issues going to happen. Yeah.
Very interesting. Thanks, sharing.
I was just going to go back to your point on evaluating success and what it really means to an organisation. So I think there's a number of ways that as a provider you can determine whether something is good value, what return on investment you get. Firstly, I think increase in efficiency. Are people doing things, quicker, For me, it's not about reducing the quality there, though. It's how do people do things more quickly to a better standard, and that is absolutely possible with AI tools. And there's a number of different, it depends, it's totally transformational for your business, but it depends in which area you want it to transform. Do you want it to make people do things quicker, but to the same standard? That's one thing. Do you want to improve the standards? That's another. Do you want to improve the quality? That's another way you can measure things. Or do you want, is best practice the most important thing to you? And it depends where you are as a business. I know that having AI products within your toolkit as an organization can reduce your risk profile for insurers, which is incredibly appealing. We would spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on our liability insurance. How can we impact on that? Is that where you can get some return?
Yeah.
Can you, there's ambient technology which can listen to assessments. Does that mean that people can be out there doing more assessments and not wasting their time typing things up? Does that increase your conversion rate as a business? Does it reduce your churn rate as a provider because your teams feel better supported? They have access to information that they need exactly when they need it in whatever language they speak. We are expecting a huge reduction in churn for a business that really invests in their workforce, and that's for care managers as well as carers themselves. So there's loads of different ways that you can get return on this. It's about having your evaluation metrics as a business before going into it. What are you looking to improve? What are you looking to increase? And I think productivity, efficiency, quality, and then in terms of your risk profile, it can have a huge impact.
Some of our members are using AI tools to help with the rostering, optimizing rotas, and that can have a very significant impact on reducing travel time, which not only reduces costs, but it can make the work easier, like the runs work better for the care workers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think you've got a supervision module, haven't
Yeah.
you? Because I think sometimes that sort of thing can fall by the wayside when everybody's busy.
Yeah.
But having the tools to help you do that faster, and looking at, we did an analysis recently of all of the home care inspection reports that CQC published over the last year. And often providers are falling down because they're not recording everything,
Yeah.
and they're not following up on audits. And these tools help all of those processes. And it's ridiculous. If you're doing good care, you want to be able to show that you're doing good care, to record it and evidence it. And this can really help. And if you get an outstanding rating rather than a good, or if you get good rather than it requires improvement, that can have a big impact on your ability to charge or even to get work at all, because some councils won't let you on their frameworks if you have a poor rating. So
I think that's a really interesting point, actually, on if you don't get the right rating, you're then unable to grow the business, maybe even sustain the business. And one of the fastest wins that we might have is implementing AI, even at keeping things at the same standard, but just doing it faster and better. So Hannah, just on that, if you're thinking about a care provider that is not on AI right now, in the home care market, what should they do first? Because actually, I'm not entirely certain whether I should focus on my recruitment first, my compliance first, or something else. But what should I do if I'm just going into the AI hemisphere for the first time?
I think it depends, unfortunately, on where the blockers are within your business. So if recruitment and retention is really what's holding you back in an organisation, that's probably where I would start. If you're, cost per hire, they're saying is up to £6,000 for a home care worker. If that's really where your issue is, there are tools out there that can help speed up that process, do a lot of the auto screening for you. If it is improving the quality within the business, I would start to look at compliance tools. So we talk about AI making people do things quicker. I think it's important to note that there are things that AI can do better than humans. So machine learning, looking at huge data sets and, predictive analytics, that's stuff that a human couldn't even do. So it really depends on what the challenges are within your business. We know generally what the operational challenges are and have been for organizations. It would be worth doing an analysis of your organization as a whole. I would probably speak to your staff, because actually you get a lot of information from your care management team about what's really causing them the most stress, really.
Yeah.
Is there things that you could do to stop any churn when it comes to your head office staff? Is it that your clients are complaining because people are not getting the information they need? I would probably start with a tool around that. So if you are completely new to AI, I would start with just where the main focus is for your business at that time. Get people really familiar with it, and then, or even have educational sessions around what AI can do and get a consensus around what that needs to look like. But start small, and where that really hits you, where the big wins are for your business.
Find where that nucleus problem is.
Exactly, yeah.
So show of hands rather, how many people are currently using AI within their businesses in any shape? Yeah. And if we were to say recruitment or retention or new client acquisition, where is the main problem? Is it recruitment, show of hands? Retention, and that might be carers or office staff? No? We've got a good bunch of providers here. And is it client acquisition? So there's that marketing piece of using AI for some of that marketing space, which I think is also quite interesting.
I think there's another angle on this, but because the NHS and the government is pushing so much on neighbourhood health, everybody that's supporting people at home is going to gradually see more tech solutions. Councils are implementing things I talked about, falls monitoring and so on, but we're also seeing more health monitoring tools, platforms, people coming out of hospital, with monitoring COPD or diabetes or whatever. So there is a big need to ensure that everyone is trained and ready, and also that we don't leave anyone behind, because there is a digital divide already. Quite a lot of older people don't have access. The NHS app is going to be used probably with AI tools as well. So we've actually got a lot of work to do to get ourselves all up to speed and make sure that the people around us, people that we're supporting, and our care teams feel confident.
And Jane, do you think, is there funding available for providers to start playing with AI, smaller providers especially?
I don't think so specifically at the moment, but
is that something that you think might be on the horizon?
Definitely. I mean, the government has been quite generous in general in supporting technology uptake. So, the digital social care records, for instance, uptake has increased from 40% to 80% since the pandemic, and a lot of that has been through grant funding. I've just been having some conversations recently with the digital social care people at the department about what's next. But I think they're still trying to work through that. There's lots of reorganisations going on everywhere in councils and ICBs, and NHS England is moving into DHSC. So at the moment there's feels like a bit of a hiatus while everyone's trying to work out what their job is.
Figuring out where everyone sits. Yes. And so Gemma, you've been on this journey already as a provider. What's your one piece of advice to people to say, watch out for X, or something that you think if you went back in time, you would try to do slightly differently, better?
I think it just reiterates what Hannah was saying. It's all about do your internal research first, find out where the pinch points are, find out where the business needs are. Don't just invest quickly, do your homework. For us, it's also about a major part of our framework as far as what we're offering is looking at outcomes. CQC, really clearly, we had our inspection in May and August, and a lot of it was around how do you demonstrate the improvement of an individual, and how do you demonstrate those that you can't help onward, support. And it's really looking at the efficiencies for us. Yes, we are a very caring organisation, because all these people in care are, but it's essentially how do we demonstrate that we are being innovative to move with the times to help to support. But it's also looking at the efficiencies as well. So how can we use AI to really look at the scheduling, forecasting, our budgets, that then links into, we know the seasonal variations, the seasonal pressures that we all face. So it's actually that forecasting measure of preempting that kind of recruitment drive several months early, so you're ahead of the game, rather than actually that knee-jerk, we know it's coming, but you're being prompted it's coming, and it's then pushing the process through to make sure that all the operational efficiencies are working together. I think for me as well, it's supporting people on a client journey, and it's very much about the kind of the ripple effects of care, looking at supporting people from that initial inquiry, and then being able to take them along that journey, regardless whether they use the service or not. But it's really learning from where those where the conditions managements come in, that then it triggers the training, because we know we've got certain clients who've got certain conditions, when those peaks are happening, and when do we need to look at additional support for carers to really reinforce the requirements through winter pressures, for example. So it's just to make sure that they act as trigger points to send us alerts to be more efficient in what we do.
I would say that the technology in AI is evolving so rapidly that you have to adopt a kind of experimental mindset. There isn't like a silver bullet. It is really suck it and see at the moment. And I'm finding that you start learning a tool and you think it's really good, and then somebody does an update and the next one is better. So it's quite a job to keep up with it. But I would say just start somewhere and experiment and be prepared that you're going to have to keep learning and iterating.
Yeah, I think that's really wonderful advice. And on advice, one thing I'd ask before we go into a Q&A with the team here, if everybody could say one use case that they've had, whether it's personal or professional, with a tool, doesn't have to be within care, and also your one piece of advice to everyone in the audience if they're going on their AI journey. If we can start from yourself, Anna.
I think it would be remiss of me not to talk about CareBrain again. One of the features that we've got, which I think has had a huge impact, is a care plan audit tool. Our teams used to spend maybe 3 or 4 hours auditing care plans against the fundamental standards. They would be distracted. Understandably, operations is incredibly busy, and often at the end of it there would still be potential mistakes within, some care plans are 60 pages long. Some, we have providers that we work with who've got 80 different types of documents. How is anyone expected to be perfect throughout that? So we now have a functionality where you hit a button and it will within seconds give you a full audit against the fundamental standards, saying where the strengths are. Importantly, I think it's really important to highlight where people are doing a really good job, what the recommendations for actions would be to make sure it's consistent and it meets the fundamental standards, and then any other recommended improvements. So if there's inconsistencies between naming conventions, etc. throughout, it can do that within seconds, and that really frees up people's time. Firstly, it gives you reassurance that you're doing a really good job, and it gives quality teams a reassurance that people have got very clear guidance on where they're going wrong. And then also it frees up hours and hours of people's time to be able to focus on whether that's increasing their capacity as a business, whether that's improving their quality, improving their productivity. There's so many, I think, on the back of that. The output eventually is safer care for the person who receives services. So yeah, and I think, what was the next question?
One piece of advice to people going on that journey.
When you're doing your homework, there's a few things I would recommend you look into. There's an ethical AI pledge that providers can take, and that's part of the Oxford Institute for Ethics. They have, because we're lacking regulation at the moment, there's a pledge that people can sign up to. So any decent provider should have signed up to the AI ethical pledge. It's really worth looking into what those frameworks are. So it's about bias, transparency, and then I think what's really important is co-production. So really, how have they designed this to be as user-friendly as possible, to reduce that digital exclusion from people, and really think about, the motivations behind that organization. And that's how I think you'll find those partnerships rather than kind of an off-the-shelf SaaS model. So again, it's about that research you do.
Great, thank you.
And I don't want to reiterate it, but I would absolutely say CareBrain, and going back to the operational consistency and the understanding. That is my one biggest piece of advice, is really get a piece of AI that is aligned to service delivery, quality, improving outcomes, improving efficiencies, improving well-being, and bite-sized chunks. Do your research, have a trial, see whether it fits in the organisation. Don't go too big too soon, because you want to regroup and then refocus. Learn from the team, so really understand the feedback from the team, boots on the ground, people doing the hard work. Is it working for them? If not, what else can they have that will improve their own efficiencies? Because that will have a really positive knock-on effect by retention, well-being, mood, engagement. So it's all kind of this holistic approach that needs to be taken. So I would not necessarily wish to pinpoint another AI provider at this moment in time. I think it's I don't want to sound biased, but from what I see, it ticks a lot of our boxes.
Great. Thank you. And Jane, can be personal or professional?
Yeah, one of the things that we have done in the Home Care Association is actually ask our staff, in an anonymous survey, about what AI apps they're using, either personally or at work, because we want to be able to support people who need to use things at work to do it safely. So I think that's quite a good idea.
That's really great.
And then to make sure that you have policies and governance processes, you log everything, especially if you're going to be using AI tools, in regulated activities. The Care Quality Commission will be asking. We're already beginning to see, and you've got to be able to explain, why you've ended up with a particular outcome and how it's got there. But training your team, I think, is really important to understand the risks. I mean, just in general, cybersecurity, bring your own devices in home care is like a real big thing. We know that the cyber criminals are targeting us because there's a lot of personal data. So this just adds to that. So everybody's got to be all over this like a rash.
I think that's really, really great, and I love the idea of surveying your staff, and whether it's care workers or office team. I think that's really interesting. And as everyone's been very professional, I'll tell you one of my own ones that's slightly more silly. I had an argument with my 6-year-old daughter, and I thought, I was fuming. I was like, I'm absolutely right, and what the hell is she doing? And I used ChatGPT, and I was having this back and forth conversation as though I had a friend there. And it turns out, actually, after much discussion, I probably wasn't so right. And I went back and I then asked it, how do I reframe this, but still remain as the parent? And then had this lovely conversation with my 6-year-old, and we kind of rebalanced the relationship. So I think there's some really fun personal use cases there as well. And for me, I think as a piece of advice, it's think of yourself as R&D, as your R&D team. Use everything, play with things, and just think, use the free trials that you're getting on everything, and just see what works. Obviously, I think the cybersecurity thing is very scary, so be careful of that. But absolutely, just get out there and use things. So we're going to move on to some Q&A right now. But before I lose the audience, I'd like to say, if anyone wants to donate to the Royal Osteoporosis Society, come and find me later on. I'm doing a day in the life with a cast just to see what all this whole bone health thing is about. So, but any questions about AI first? We will start picking on people if we're not getting questions. Anything? Oh, here we go. Thank you. Gentleman over here.
Hang on.
Thank you.
What are the dangers of AI, and please say something about the environment?
Dangers of AI, and is there anything about the environment and
yeah, absolutely. I think it's worth looking at what resources are used to develop these tools. There is actually some really helpful guidance on the carbon impact of AI, and recently there's been something released which is saying it's not as bad as it was initially thought. So it's not hugely different to using your laptop for a couple of minutes, for example. So there's some really good studies out there at the moment. And actually, we're going to be producing some materials on that ourselves at CareBrain. So if you follow us on LinkedIn, we'll be sharing some guidance on that. I think when it comes to care and health, it's really important to weigh up exactly what you're getting from something and the benefits of that. And sometimes, there are some tools out there that are hugely carbon inefficient. So it's worth looking at what people are doing as a business to be a bit more carbon neutral. And that should be a part of somebody's research as well.
I think that's really interesting. And there's actually a talk happening, I think, straight after this about the environment and how to get B Corp certification. So might be two talks that are very well placed.
And I think because AI is moving so quickly and there's a bit of a race, like a bit of a race between the different LLMs because it is such a new technology. It's a bit like when Google first started and it was hugely inefficient when people were doing all the searches. It does, after a few years, once everything kind of settles down, there typically is more sustainability implemented throughout those organizations.
Great, thank you. Great question, thank you. Anybody else? Please. There's one in the corner over there. Thank you.
Hello, that was really interesting. My question, I think it's a really good point you make about people learning and doing their research before they go out and commission a new AI tool. Is there anywhere you would recommend people would go to for impartial advice about the kind of providers and solutions which they might be interested in commissioning?
There's not a framework at the moment. So it is, as Jane mentioned, it's a bit like everyone's trying to work it all out. I mean, it's probably worth approaching certain providers yourself. Unfortunately, we're obviously always happy to help with what we consider good to look like. We're really keen to be part of the thought leadership around that. I think the Oxford Ethics project for AI ethics in care is a really helpful place to start as well. And you can see like-minded people being part of that group. And again, unfortunately, the rest of it is kind of, the Department of Health and Social Care have got some guidance. My view is it's very loose and limited. Jane, you might have some.
Yeah, I mean, the NHS has got guidance for both developers and adopters, and anybody that's developing anything absolutely must read that and check that their solution is, they've got to register with the MHRA, particularly if it's anything in health care and so on. But I don't think at the moment there isn't like a witch guide. I think the whole field is just evolving so fast. I mean, literally every day something new happens, isn't it? It's a bit overwhelming.
One of the things I would also add to that is there's lots of really interesting AI influencers that you'll find on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever, that are people that are testing a large majority of products that are coming out. And I'd follow a lot of that just so you're kind of keeping looped in. There's newsletters that a lot of those people are putting out. And then if you're going to implement it within the market, then speaking to people like Hannah, who are in the know and might be able to say, well, this feels safe, that doesn't. Oh, that's a product that, X person is also producing within the market that is much more specific. Might be an interesting way to look at it as well.
There is also the Care Tech Guide. That's free for providers to have a look on. So there's a registry. It doesn't have everybody on that registry, but it's a good place to start. And then the DigiHive as well are probably quite good places. These are subscription services, so they're not accessible to all AI providers. But again, it gives you a good place to start.
Digital Care Hub, which is by providers for providers. There's quite a few videos and training material. Also, the Association of Directors of Adult Social Services have done a few webinars about AI and how they're using them in councils, how they're thinking about using them.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? I think we might have time for maybe one more. There you go.
Thanks, guys. That was really interesting. Quick question. I think in terms of like the hesitation of AI in the UK, I think there's a massive hesitation to adopt it. And when you look at places like the Nordics and the US, they're a lot quicker to adopt the technology. How do you think the UK can kind of catch up with the Nordics, the US, when it comes to adopting AI?
I think that's a really interesting question. So I, once a year, go out to the International Franchise Association's annual convention in the States. And it's really interesting speaking to franchisors within the home care market there. They are, I feel at least a decade ahead of us. When I went out 4 or 5 years ago, pre-ChatGPT kind of coming on the scene, they were right in there slicing and dicing data in a way that I've not seen providers do en masse in the UK. I think a lot of that comes to the fact that competitors are doing it, and so to stay relevant, they're having to do it, and they're having to move at a faster pace. And as a franchisor in the home care space, I'm finding that there are much more tech-savvy people that we are speaking to on a daily basis coming into the market. And I think what we'll see over the next 10 years is a fundamental change in the entrepreneurs that are within the sector, and they're going to be more technology hungry. If we look at the market as it currently stands, it hasn't really changed in the last 20 years prior to now. We're talking about 80% digital. We're still on paper. I got into the home care sector in 2012, 2013. It was filing cabinets wall to wall, and that wasn't that long ago, actually. So I think what you'll find is a natural shift because of the people that will change within the sector.
One I was going to say, one area that I didn't mention, but last week I spoke at the National Association of Care Catering, and talking about robotics and AI use in catering, in commercial catering. Now, the fastest development of that is in Asia, and that's really driven by labour shortages. But you can go to restaurants in China where literally all of the cooking, the serving, the ordering, everything is done by AI and robotics. the UK is quite slow at developing this stuff, and I think maybe to Mark's point, one of the problems we've got is energy is so expensive here in relation to, you know, China and the US. But we're going to have to get our act together, and you know the government is behind it, which is good. But they need to do something to support companies. You know, I've been saying because it costs quite a lot of money to develop new software, and you know you get some money to begin, but then just trying to get to that place where you've got recurring revenue is tough. And if they could provide some more funding for companies in that space, I think we might get more over the line.
I think that's such an important piece, isn't it? Even for providers, when you think a small provider to sort of derail 6 months getting behind a system that will most certainly change within that time frame. Training your staff is expensive, implementing is expensive, and then moving on to the next thing. So I think having some sort of funding is going to be part of that solution for sure. So. But thank you very much, wonderful panel, and thank you for being a great audience as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.